Brothers and sisters who are out in the hallway, please come inside. We're going to start the program shortly. We're going to try to start within a minute or two, so wrap up what you're doing and come inside, please. Someone was asking for book list?
Yeah, I'm going to have it at the end. Yeah, I have it. I have a slide that has all the names of these books on it. Yeah. No, I mean, you have it too, so if you want to email it to whoever wants it too.
Do you email it?
Yeah.
Like the office email or whatever, and we'll actually put it up on our website.
Sure. Yeah, bismillah. My pleasure.
Have an ad link to Amazon.
Sure.
Are we doing the web page? Yeah, I can actually do it right now.
If you want, yeah, sure.
Actually, I'm going to talk to Reese because Reese knows it's the best way to kind of lay it out on the website.
Sure.
Start.
Bismillah, okay, go.
Assalamu alaikum. We're going to start our last session, our session before the Q&A. So, come inside.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we'll continue. We're getting to the concluding session where I wrap up with many of the concepts and ideas we've been talking about. And I think we have about 2 hours until Salatul Asr. And they've asked me to go to Salatul Asr. So I'm here, to do khidmat for the community. So after that, we'll do Q&A. Inshallah, if people are getting tired and they want to conclude it, Bismillah, you tell me, and then there's no point in making people stay if they don't want to stay either. So I just wanted to mention that is that, inshallah, we can continue with Q&A as the conversation continues, and then khalas, and then I think we'll have Asr, and I think my understanding is Mullah Mikhail will come in the evening for the final session, inshallah. So one point, we're on the last, this was the slide I didn't finish before. We're going to go into conclusions right then. But the point that I was talking about before is I will reiterate it and say it again. You can spoil your child, but you cannot love them too much. You can spoil your kids by giving them an Xbox whenever they want it, by giving them a DS, by giving them, a new iPhone or that kind of stuff. We need to be careful of that because the danger of this society and this zamana, this era that we live in, is it's very materialistic already. And if we think that I'm guilty as a parent, I don't spend time with my kids, so let me buy them things and make them feel better, that's not going to work. That is going to spoil your kids, okay? You can spoil them by buying them too much. If anything, what does our deen teach us is zuhud. Zuhud is not that you have to be faqir, that you live out. Zuhud means your heart is not attached to the dunya, right? Your heart is not attached to material ideas. My house, my car, my clothes, how much money I have in my bank account, etc., etc. There's a beautiful quote I learned. It says that your self-worth does not equal your net worth. Your net worth, whatever you're worth, $2 million, $5 million, means nothing related to your self-worth. And we have to teach this to our kids. We have to teach our kids, just because someone is a multimillionaire doesn't make them better than a person who's driving a taxi or working at a gas station or something like that, right? In the eyes of the dunya, they have one way of looking at it. In our deen, many of the awliya are the people that drive the taxi cab and are garbage people and things like that. Because their maqam with Allah is different than the maqam that the dunya gives them, right? This is a real important lesson we teach our kids. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges you on what's inside, not what is on the outside. Okay? So this idea of you can spoil your kids, but you can't love them too much. Give your kids as much of your attention, right? In a good, positive, healthy, holistic way that you can give them. They may not remember the things you gave them, but they'll remember all the love you poured into your lives. Your kids, trust me, remember, my father or my mother, they came to my soccer match when I was in high school. They came when I gave a speech in front of the whole school. Right? My parents, when I went to the science fair, my father was there standing next to me when the judges came and checked out my thing. That's the kind of stuff they're going to remember 10, 15, 20, 30 years later down their life. They're not going to remember, oh yeah, it was my birthday when I was 12 years old and my dad gave me like a new bicycle. Maybe they remember it like, okay, khalas, what's more meaningful to them, what's going to make them develop as a better person is the experience they had with you. And this is I want to point this out with the kids, and then I'm going to talk about the next slide in a second. For the children, what you should be seeking out from your parents and from people that love you, that you love, that respect you and that respect you, is that you want to have experiences with these people. Imagine how it is with your asatiza, with your teachers, They're giving you the most valuable thing that they have, which is the knowledge that Allah Ta'ala gave them from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The time you spend with them learning that, it's priceless. That is priceless. I still remember conversations I had with my asatiza 20 years ago. When I was sitting with them, we were driving in the car, I asked him a question, he asked me a question, he said, how are you doing? You know, these are things that this is like, inshallah, you carry this for the rest of your lives. Now, we get this is a glimpse. I just want to take a point to mention this. This is a glimpse of the time that the Sahaba had with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sheikh Sulaiman Mullah has a beautiful lecture. It's called, you should look it up. Sheikh Sulaiman Mullah is an amazing scholar from South Africa, and he comes to Canada every year to speak at the RIS convention. Many years ago, he gave a lecture called about the Sahaba Ikram. In this lecture, at the very end of it, I still remember it, he tells the story of Hazrat Jabir radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's an amazing story. Basically, I'm giving you the summary of the story is that, you know, Jabir radiallahu anhu lost his father when he was young, and he had a big debt to pay. And he didn't know what to do. And so what happens is basically he goes to the Prophet ﷺ for help, right? And the Prophet ﷺ helps him pay off some of the debt that his father had left behind. And then what happens is that, you know, this is very meaningful to him. Like when someone helps you out in a tough time, that's something big, right? Then later on, Jabir is riding his camel. And I mean, maybe Maulana Abdullah can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he's riding his camel, and his camel is going very fast, right? And he's trying to get home quickly, and he's trying to get home quickly because he has a newlywed wife. And so what happens is that the Prophet ﷺ says, "Oh Jabir, yeah Jabir, they're coming back from a ghazwa." He says, "Jabir, will you sell me your camel?" And the way Sheikh Sulaiman explains the story is so amazing. Imagine Jabir, he's like a young guy, right? He's going home to his new wife, and this is Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asking you, "Jabir, will you sell me your camel?" And then he's like, you know, it's like my car, man. I really like my car, but like, you know, you're like someone, your Buzurg asks you, like, will you sell me your car? Like, you don't want to do be'adabi, so you don't want to like say no. So you say, okay, yes, I'll sell my car. And the Prophet says, how much will you sell it for him? And they have a conversation, and they come to an agreement on the amount, right? And there's some details. I'm skipping over the details just in the interest of time right now. So they fix a price, right? They fix the price, and the Prophet says, okay, tomorrow, you know, when we get back to Medina Munawwara, we'll deal with the price. So the next day Jabir comes. He gets home, he says to his wife, he goes like, oh, you know, the Prophet asked me for my camel, and he asked me to sell it to him. And she said, what did you say? He said, well, it's the Prophet, of course, I have to make the deal. And she says, okay, khair, there's khair in it. Anything you do with Rasulullah is khair. So the next day he goes, and Hazrat Bilal is there. And Hazrat Bilal was the financier, right? He was the guy who took care of the treasurer, we would say, of Rasulullah. So Hazrat Bilal calls Hazrat Jabir, and he says, you know, the Prophet wanted me to make this transaction with you. And they deal with the money. And so basically, anyway, what happens is the Prophet gives him extra money. He gives him extra money, and Jabir is like, wow, this is more than I asked for. But you know, he didn't say anything. He's overwhelmed by this experience as well. The conclusion of the story, again, I apologize for not telling it in entirety. I should go back and read it. It's in Kanzul Umal, I think, is the text. At the end, he sees the Prophet ﷺ, and Rasulullah ﷺ says, did you get your payment? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, yes, of course I did. And then he says, they finish the transaction, and Jabir says to him, like, why did we go through all of this, like you coming and going and like this and that? And the Prophet simply says to him, Jabir, I wanted to spend time with you. And when Jabir hears this, he's so happy. Can you imagine Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, I just wanted to spend time with you. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to have like more suhbah with you. I mean, that is Jannah right there in this world, right? To have that. So I'm saying is that's when we look to our elders, we look to our akabirin, when we look to the asatiza, to our teachers. That's how we want to develop the idea in our kids. They should want to spend time with people, real quality time, right? It's not just, oh, so-and-so bought me a gift certificate or bought me a gift or whatever. It's that, no, the time that I spent with these people, that, like, you know, my heart is full from that moment. So think of it that way. Parents can be a part of that, and parents have to be the first, you know, piece of that puzzle. But beyond that, develop the mentality in your kids that they always want to go sit in the majalis, in the gatherings, or in the presence of scholars and of righteous people, inshallah. You know what I mean? Think about it. There's people right now, there's kids, if you ask them, And I mean, I'm even like ashamed to say this in the masjid, right? But I say it only to make a point. There's people right now, kids that would like go crazy if you told them like you can go hang out with Justin Bieber. They would just like flip out if they said, oh yeah, you can go see like, I don't know, like Kobe Bryant or something like that. They'd just be like, what? No way. Like I get to go, if it's a celebrity or a sports athlete or star or something like that, people would just like, you would completely blow them away. And if you said to someone, Sheikh Fulan is coming, from California, Sheikh is coming from Europe, from England, they're coming from South Africa, they're coming from Medina Munawwara, coming from so-and-so, and we're going to go to the dars of the Sheikh, and afterward, you can go and sit and say, Musafaha, give salam to the Sheikh, and maybe even ask him a question. Like, there's people, their heart is like, Allahu Akbar, they're so excited by that. We want to produce the idea in our kids, and that's what they're looking for. These are people of weight, these are people that mean something, and the rest is triviality, the rest is silliness, right? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't affect them in the same way. Now, the last session on the slide, can I have the next slide please? It's called life skills. The idea is prepare your kids to deal with life. Don't coddle them. Teach them life skills. Now, I want to make this very practical because I've been talking about a lot of theoretical things. I want to give you some practical tips as well. And this is from Imam Zaid Shakir, because I always try to reference my teachers when they're so they get the reward for their good lessons. Imam Zaid, he wrote an article. It's a really good article. Maybe I can send it to you guys, inshallah. He says what we should be teaching our children. And it's an essay. And in it, he says, look, the problem with a lot of kids today, they're soft. They sit inside in the basement playing video games, eating junk food. They're not healthy, active kids. And part of you have to be intellectually sharp and healthy. You need to be spiritually, your heart has to be connected with the book of Allah and with the sunnah of Rasulullah. And physically, we need to take care of ourselves, right? We don't want to be a lazy ummah. This is an ummah that like changed the course of human history, right? We need to be, now if you're out playing basketball in 1 hour, 2 hours every afternoon, great. Keep it up, mashallah, do that. If you're the parent of those kinds of kids, that's great, mashallah. I'm unfortunately seeing too many parents that keep their kids all summer. Their kids are like in the basement playing video games and stuff. Your kids, you should go tell them, go play in the woods. Go hike around. Get muddy. Go climb, the hills and stuff like that. Go get experience nature. Be out there in nature, right? I know parents that what they do is they tell their kids, okay, in the summer the weather is nice, it's not cold, it's not raining or snowing or anything like that. They say, okay, you're going to go sleep outside. You're going to pray Isha. We're going to set up a tent, and you can go sleep in the tent, right? And like, we'll give you a flashlight and this and that, but there's bugs, okay? That's the dunya, there's bugs. Deal with it, right? At the morning time when it's time for Fajr, then you come back inside and pray Fajr. The idea is you get them out there in the world and experiencing it, okay? And if you're a father, I encourage you, go, as you're a parent, go out there and spend the night out there with your kids. Have that experience. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, my wife is a convert. And her family, like she grew up doing these kinds of things. I grew up like a desi doctor son, you know what I mean? Like I didn't grow up with that kind of outdoors experience. And my wife is telling us, our kids, this is good nasiha she's giving me as well. She says, no, we should teach our kids. May Allah reward her. She's teaching, your kids need to be tough. They need to, when it snows, go outside and tell your kids to shovel the driveway. Okay? When it's the summertime or the fall time, tell your kids to go rake the leaves. Yeah, it stinks on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon to spend 1 hour, 2 hours raking the leaves. That's life. Life is about struggle. We have to tell people life. You have to do things in life. You can't just sit there and be texting all day or be surfing the internet all day. This is what it's. I really believe this goes into character building, right? This goes into how you develop your character. We should be teaching kids to work with their hands, right? Some of the scholars, Imam Zaid says this as well. Some people have gardens in the back. My mom used to have a garden in the back, and when we would go visit him in the summer, he was like, okay, beta, you had your lunch, you prayed your dhuhr, let's go outside now. And we're like, oh, Mamu, it's hot. He's like, get down on your knees, start digging in the ground, start digging in the soil. He used to live in New Brunswick, okay? So, Jersey connection, right? So, get on your knees, start digging in the ground. Like you got to pull up the weeds, you got to plant the flowers, you need to water the things like that. And looking at it, I was 15 and I was complaining, oh, why do we have to do this, blah, blah. But you know what? That's the nature of life. And I can tell you, subhanAllah, I had this experience last summer. I went home to see my parents last summer. I just share this as an example, inshallah, there's some khair in it. I went home to see I spent last summer with my family, my parents in Ramadan in upstate New York. And one day my father came to me and he said, uh, beta, let's go outside. Now, when we were young, my dad was like, I'm not going to hire someone to mow the lawn. There was three of us. There's three of us brothers. He said, I have three sons. You're going to mow the lawn. Okay? So we would all have to take turns. Someone mows the front, someone mows the back. And that's how high school was for us. And it was I'm so happy that my father did that, right? Now, that's 20 years ago. I go back to visit my father. My father says, we're fasting. Okay, last summer in July. My father says, Beta, utho, get up, let's go outside. I said, for what? It's hot outside. He says, we're going to go weed. My father has some nice bushes and garden and things like that, on his property. And he says, we're going to go pull weeds out. And I looked and I was like, oh, there's a lot of weeds out here, right? He says, go. So I have a son. My son was 9 years old at the time. He said, go let him play. He can go run around in the backyard. You and I are going to pull these weeds out. And my father, he gave me gloves, right? And he says, now go, get to work. And I'm sitting there, I'm fasting, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Iftar isn't until like 8 p.m. I'm like, oh man, it's really hot, I'm thirsty, this is really tough work. Lekin, think about it. I said Allah Ta'ala puts things in our hearts. Inshallah, it's accepted. I said I'm getting to just sit and hang out with my father, right? I'm actually just doing something with my father. Second of all, it came to me. This is what the Sulaha talk about. Every one of our hearts is a garden and it has weeds in it. You have to pull those weeds out. Jealousy, anger, takabbur, pride, right? This is like, you have to clean, you want to keep the garden beautiful, you have to trim it. You have to take care of it. And I'm thinking I spent an hour, 2 hours pulling the weeds out. Maybe this can help me pull the weeds out of my heart someday, inshallah. Right? I mean, these are the things, like the lessons that we learn from our elders, from our teachers and things like that. That's what we need to spend time with our kids. Is we don't want to coddle them. You teach them life skills. It's the little things that you do now that make a big difference later on in life. Now, I'm going to use a really cheesy analogy, but I'll use it because I think it's kind of actually works. If you've ever seen the original Karate Kid film, right? The original, it was on, we grew up watching this. What is the story? I mean, it's a really, it's an interesting story. There's this kid, he gets beat up. He's actually from Jersey, right? He goes to California, he gets beat up in California and all this stuff, and he meets this old guy, Mr. Miyagi, who has a garden, and he trims the bonsai bushes and stuff like that, and he teaches him wax on, wax off. The guy's like, what does all this mean, right? And it's kind of like cheesy at one level, but it comes from an idea. If you study the martial arts, when you do routine, mundane actions again and again and again, they say the Shaolin monks that live in the Shaolin temples, that are like the people who develop Kung Fu, these people every day they sweep their courtyard, right? They have Zen gardens, right? They do things in nature day in and day out, and what it does is it trains your body. This is what we say, this is like riyada, right? This is exercise. Physical exercise is connected to spiritual exercise. That's what we need to teach our children. So I always think the Karate Kid example. He's teaching them wax on, wax off, and he's like, oh, what is this? This is so nonsensical. This isn't going to save me. And at the end of the day, he's learning some moves and he's getting lessons about patience and how you have to work hard in life. And I think there's benefit to that, right? Wisdom is the lost treasure of the believer. Wherever you find it, take it. Inshallah, there's khair in it for you. We don't want to coddle our kids. What do I mean by coddling kids? I'm going to give you another example. Right now, like I said, I'm a college chaplain. I have these kids, they come to college. MashaAllah, they're very bright. They worked really hard. They aced their SATs. They wrote amazing college prep essays. They come to these top schools, etc., etc. These kids don't even know how to do their laundry. Okay? These kids don't know how to wash dishes, some of them. Right? Why? Because what happens is parents always said, paro, paro, paro. Study, study, study. Study, study, study. Just keep studying so you can go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Right? Go to these top schools. And when they get there, when they were younger, their parents didn't teach them, okay, part of life is you have clothes, they get dirty, you have to wash them. Now, I could give some Sufi answer and be like, oh, that's deep, man, because the nature of dunya is that you have a body and your body gets dirty in the same way that you have a heart and your heart gets dirty. So, you have to purify it, you have to clean it, you have to wash it out, right? You don't even have to go to that level. Is that there's people now that they hire companies. They hire people that pick up the dirty laundry of college students and wash it and give it back to them, right? Whereas when you're in college, you're 18, 19, I believe, and this, my wife, has a big believer in this as well, by the time your kids are that age, they should know how to do dishes. They should know how to do basic household chores. They should know how to do their laundry. They should know how to do these basic things. Okay? Why? What happens is, oh, mashallah, doctor, PhD, fulan and fulan, you're some big shot, this and that. And you can't even like make eggs for breakfast, by yourself. You know what I mean? Like, just, these are things that people need to learn along the way. Now, I'm not saying you have to go make like crazy, amazing biryani and halim and all this kind of stuff and know that when you're at the age of 18. I'm saying learn some basic life skills, because this is going to teach kids about, like, you have to survive. Right? This is just a part of like a life lesson that we want to impart to our kids. And to the kids, I want to say, take this stuff seriously. Don't think, oh man, my parents are just making me like do my laundry or do this and that. Think of it as in like, I mean, it's all about the attitude, right? Your parents say, I'm teaching you to do the laundry so that you can be a responsible adult. Okay, I'm teaching you how to do this stuff as a teenager. What should my and your attitude be? Now, when my parents need my help, I can do their khidmah. I can help my mother do the dishes. I can help my parents with some basic chores around the house and that kind of stuff. Because that's khair upon khair, right? I'm benefiting myself, I'm benefiting my family, and I'm getting ajr and sawab along the way for it. It's all about the mindset, right? It's about the mindset of how we teach our children, right? Teach your kids. I mean, my wife right now, I'm just using personal examples as practical examples. I hope they're beneficial. I hope you don't mind me talking about my family. Is that, take out the garbage, right? Take out the garbage. Garbage day is Sunday night. So garbage can is heavy. Go lift it. Try. Do your best. If you have a problem, then you come back and you ask for help. But you have to do it. It's disgusting. Who wants to do it? Lekin, this is part of life. You have to deal with unappetizing things in your life, right? Just simple things. I'm not saying you have to go send them to like some survival camp, and that kind of stuff. I'm saying basic things around the house. Okay? Now, number 2. Children need to know that there's a moral context to the universe, that there is a plan and a design, that life is not capricious or accidental. There's a governor, a regulator, a supervisor, a God who really watches and scrutinizes our actions. He sees and he hears. The greatest destroyer of childhood and its security is purposelessness. The feeling that their existence is not meaningful, that nothing matters. Work, people, possessions, relationships, life itself, none of it matters. The culture teaches them as much, and it begins at home. The idea there is this idea of purposelessness. That is the great danger of our time. We live in a society, right? This is like the plague of nihilism and postmodernism, of that there's no meaning out there. Like, you can do whatever you want. Like, if you can swindle people and rob people and manipulate people and get away with it, like, okay, who's going to stop you, right? Powerful people can keep being powerful and doing what they want. This is what our young people are being exposed to, right? And the culture reinforces it. We as mu'mineen wal mu'minat, inshallah, need to teach our children, teach our generation at a young age that there is a purpose, there's a maqsad, there's a goal behind why you were created. That is what, according to the Quran Kareem, we're created for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is our ultimate goal in life. The beauty of Sharia is it lays out how do you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through your family time, through your job, through your community life, through your personal life, through your economic life, through all of these things, how do you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The goal is to understand the purpose. It's not just I get up, I do what I want, when I want, how I want. I hope that's clear to people, like students are listening, to that point. It's not just I get up, it's summer vacation, I don't have to go to class, I'm going to just hang out with my friends, I'm going to play Xbox. There's a time and place for everything. There's a time when you can just go and play video games. There's a time you can play FIFA. Go play FIFA, I mean, I was one of this Ramadan, we had long, Taraweeh at night, and you get home, it's like 1 in the morning, and it's like, okay, you're with some friends, some guys from college, you're like, okay, let's play FIFA for a little bit, then maybe do some tahajjud and then get ready for suhoor, and then after that you can take a break. Like, I'm not saying you can't do these things. I'm saying is, if the goal all the time is like, I just want to hang out with my friends, I just want to play FIFA, I just want to do this, and etc., there's no purpose there, right? Develop purpose from an early age for what our kids are doing, right? The idea of people, possessions, relationships, life itself, all of this has to matter. It all has to lead to something. The dangers of this are divorce, materialism, and inhumanity. Divorce is that people don't see a healthy environment in their house, right? Between their parents. Their parents, obviously divorce for some people is inevitable. Some people that's the best option they have. But that kids that aren't around a healthy environment often enough, they think that divorce is an easy option, right? And that's the culture of the narcissism of our time, where people say, I do my thing. I do what I want to do. I married this girl. She doesn't like to do my thing. Like we're not compatible. This is not going to work. A sister marries a brother. She's like, oh, he's like this. He's like that. He just doesn't get me. There's no compatibility. I don't like talking to him. Like, okay, khalas, we're going to throw it in. Now, trust me, I'm not in any way making light of people that are in bad circumstances. Some people need serious counseling. Some people, even after they do counseling, there's no solution. They can't be together. That's one side. I'm seeing more and more young marriages that are breaking up. People that are married 6 months, they're married 1 year. They just say, I want to do this with my life. I want this kind of job and career. I want to do this with my life. I want that job and career. I want to go in this direction. They want to go in that direction. Now, either you didn't think about this stuff before and talk about it at an early phase, you didn't do premarital counseling, and I'm going to talk about that in the Q&A, or you got married and you didn't want to give up anything. Part of marriage is a compromise, right? Like compromise in a good way, like meeting expectations, right? People just say, you know, whatever, I want to do this with my life. And I want to do it on my time, my schedule, my own attitude. How do you expect to live with someone with that attitude? You know what I mean? And it goes both ways. I'm not blaming men. I'm not blaming women in this. You know, there's enough blame to go around. You find it on both sides. This kind of attitude that oftentimes happens where one person wants to try to make it work, the other doesn't, or both of them don't want to make it work. They decide to separate. So maybe you weren't meant to be together. But the problem is that, you know, there has to be some responsibility. Why didn't people think through these things or ask these questions before they got to that stage? Or are we, I'm putting a question out there, are we getting divorced for really silly reasons? You know, are our communities facing divorce problems because of silly reasons? Reasons that if we had strong counseling, if we had premarital counseling and postmarital counseling, we could work it out and work together. Now again, I've heard of and seen cases with abuse. Khalas, that's a different story. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about people who say, oh, you know, just we got divorced because of this and that. And you sit down and you go through the reasons and you think back, like maybe some of this could have been repaired, right? Materialism. We talked about materialism earlier today, which is that there's people that all they want is dunya. All they see their parents is, what kind of house do we live in? What kind of car do we drive? Where do we go on vacation? We go to Dubai on vacation. We go to Malaysia on vacation. We go to, you know, Paris on vacation. And the kids, if you're bringing up your kids on all these kinds of vacations, then what happens is that's what they expect when they get to that level as well, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't go on vacation with your family. I'm saying, what kind of vacation are you taking as a family and what are you doing here? That's just one example, right? Materialism. What kind of car do I drive? What kind of house do I live in? What kind of clothes do I wear? What kind of lifestyle do I want? What's my standard of living? Now, the beauty of fiqh and sharia is it recognizes that different people have different standards of living and all of that. What I'm saying is when you get so consumed by this, that that's all that a person is thinking about and focusing about as a young child, because that's what they see their parents being brought up as, right? Then it's tough. And then the next is inhumanity, which is the worst, is that when people don't have life skills, they don't know how to deal with people, they don't know how to deal with conflict, they don't know how to deal with you know, this kind of sense of purpose, is that it leads to just a breakdown. Now, can the next slide, please? Now, this was up to this point, this conclusion. Where do we go from here? So, now I'm going to get right into it, inshallah, if we can go to the next slide. So this is actually a thing, there's an article that I read, how to be a better role model for your kids. And these are 14 questions. And I'm just going to read the questions and then we'll talk about each one of them, okay? Like briefly comment. And this is just, it's what they call food for thought. This is the kind of thing you listen to and you reflect on and you see if it's affecting you or not affecting you. If it's not, alhamdulillah, if it is, then you have to work and then we can talk about strategies. Number 1. Do you model a life of passion and purpose? Do you feel vibrant and alive? Or does your life include things that you constantly complain about and seem to hate? What does that mean? Do you model a life of passion and purpose? Whatever you're doing, do you feel that what I'm doing is purposeful? It doesn't matter. You're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're an accountant, you're a software engineer, you're a business owner, you're a teacher. Whatever it is that you're doing, you think that what I'm doing, I care about it, I really enjoy it. I have this vibrancy, like it makes me feel excited to do what I'm doing. Or does your life include things that you constantly complain about? We all have complaints in life. This is happening, that's happening. But if it's all you do is you complain about, and you seem to hate your job, you seem to hate what you're doing, then you have to ask yourself, what role model are you setting for your kids? Your kids are going to grow up and they're going to think, my dad always hated his job, my mom always hated her job, so I have to hate my job too. I just expect to enjoy it. That's not a healthy thing. Number two, do you model taking good care of yourself physically? Do you eat junk food, smoke, and not exercise? Right? This is pretty straightforward. The Prophet ﷺ was very fit. The Sahaba were very fit people. They said the Prophet ﷺ's stomach was flat. Okay, he was a Nabi of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. His power was the power of people of Jannah. That's at a different level. But look at the Sahaba and the Salihin. These are people that they know that the body is an amana from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right now, we live in a world right now where there's overconsumption. We eat too many calorie-rich foods. We eat too much food and all of that. That's why we have diabetes problems, obesity problems, etc., etc. We just need to understand, especially the older you get, the harder it is to maintain your physical health, etc. But say you're young, right? You're young. You're a 30-year-old parent. You have like a young child. Are you always eating junk food? Your kids see you smoking. The kids see you drinking. The kids see you, astaghfirullah, hopefully they never see you drinking, right? Your kids see you not exercising. You're lazy. You're on the couch potato, etc., etc. Your kids are going to pick that up from you, right? If your kids see you, oh, my parents say, let's go for a walk in the park. It's beautiful weather. Let's go for a hike on the weekend. They say, the father says, let's go ride a bike. Let's go jogging or something like that. The mother says, let's go play in the backyard. You know what I mean? When your kids see you engaging in these activities, they will feel like going outside. You don't want to be the kind of parent that says, Beta, go play outside while I sit here and watch TV. What do you think is going to happen to the kids? The kids are going to be like, you want me to go play outside because you don't want me to be on the computer and laptop, but you're sitting and just watching TV. Okay? Sometimes these things happen, but what I mean is like, think about what role model you're setting for your kids, right? Number three, do you resolve conflicts with other people effectively, or do you withdraw, avoid confrontations, and get mad? Part of life is conflict resolution, right? Conflict management. You have to, how do you say someone, disagrees with you, someone argues with you, someone debates with you, you have a problem at work, you have a problem with your neighbor, you have a problem with a family member. You want your kids to see, how do you manage this? Do you sit down, have a calm, rational, approach with them, discuss things with them? Do you get mad? Do you scream? Do you yell? Do you say bad things about this person? Do you withdraw, and avoid confrontation, where people see that there's a problem between you and this person, you just avoid them all the time. You don't even talk to them, right? Kids are going to learn what? They're going to learn like, oh, if I have a problem with someone, I can't go talk to them. I have to just hide myself, etc. 4, does your family see you handling life's disappointments with a positive Islamic strategy? Right? We have disappointments in life. You don't get the job that you want. You don't get a raise. Something happens at work. Someone in your family is giving you trouble. Someone at work is giving you trouble. You have disappointments. Do you deal with it from an Islamic point of view? Maybe this is a fitna from Allah. Maybe it's an imtihan from Allah. Maybe it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How am I going to respond to this? What would the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam do in this kind of scenario of, that kind of stuff? That's a positive Islamic strategy. What does the Sharia say? What does the Hikmah say about having to deal with this? Or do you medicate the problems with addictive behaviors? Overeating, drugs, and alcohol, right? If you're disappointed, I didn't get my job, so-and-so is causing these kind of problems for me. Do we just like turn to like eating, comfort eating, turning na'udhu billah to worse things, astaghfirullah, like drugs and alcohol? Is that you don't want to deal with the problem, and you deal with it by doing things that have unhealthy effects. Number 5, do you model financial responsibility, or do you overindulge and live beyond your means? The idea there is, do you model financial responsibility? Do your kids see you that you're making a certain amount of money, you're paying your bills, you're taking care of the needs and expenses of your family, and they see that like, wow, we live within our means. We don't have to live in a house, that's 2x. We can live in a house that's 1x, right, times size. Or do you, like if you're living beyond your means, your kids are going to realize that, oh, it's okay, just put it on credit. We'll just get a loan for it. We'll do this and that. That is the problem that's going to transfer to the next generation. Those are the kids that are like, oh, I'm going to max out my credit card because I want to go shopping and spend $500 or $1,000 at the mall. Or I want to, like, the new iPhone 6 came out, like I want it right when I get it. Right when I can get it, right? Like that idea of that impulsiveness and indulging everything that you want. No, you teach your kids restraint. You teach them, no, just because it happened, you don't have to have it now. 6, do you model Islamic morals or akhlaq by avoiding gossiping, lying, cheating, cursing, etc., etc.? Remember what we started with in the beginning. Kids are going to learn from you. If your kids see you, I'll give you a common example. You go to a dawat at someone's house. After the dawat, you're driving home, right? And the husband and wife are saying all the bad things about the people's house they went to. Oh, do you know this about them? Do you know that about them? Someone was saying this. I heard they did this. I heard this happened to them. And your kids are in the back seat, right? Your kids are listening to you doing ghibat about someone you just went to their house. And these are supposed to be your friends. How do you think that's going to affect them? Now, when they're at an age, they're going to do ghibat and gossip and backbite and tell lies about other people. If your kids see you lying in front of other people, right? They're going to learn these behaviors. That's why you are the biggest role model for your kids at home, right? Number 7, do you model social responsibility by volunteering at the masjid, the school, or the hospital, right? We love to talk about how Islam is a religion of peace and humanity, and we take care of humanity, and we need to do all these things. MashaAllah is a good line. I do dawah and tabligh all the time. I tell that to all the non-Muslims. Islam is about peace and harmony and mercy with people. Now, if people say, my dad talks like this, but he never goes to the hospital to visit the sick people, and I'm telling people the hadith about visiting the sick people, what is that? If I'm telling people that, the part of Iman is that you pick up trash wherever you find it, right? This is the hadith. It's in Imam Bayhaqi's collection. Iman has 77 branches, right? The highest of which is to say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and the least of which is to pick up something harmful from the road and move it aside, right? Now, if I say that, and when it comes time, and my school is doing a pick up trash around the neighborhood, and I'm like, no, I'm too busy, I don't care. What is that teaching my kids, right? That these things, I say one thing and none of it matters, right? So I'm not modeling social responsibility. I live in a community. My neighbor needs help with something. I'm just like, no, it's okay, don't worry about it, I'm busy, right? Or do I say, do you need anything? What's the community, what are the needs that need to be met of the community by volunteering your time at the masjid, etc., etc. Number 8, do you model properly self-defined self-worth and self-esteem based on character traits? Or do you pursue wealth and value through material things? This is just another kind of a flip of what we said before. Properly defined self-worth and self-esteem is what we said before. Our self-esteem comes from being the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? From being a good servant and worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where our self-esteem and self-worth comes. Allah ta'ala gave me a certain ability to do a job in the world. He gave me, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher, I'm a businessman, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant. That my self-worth comes from doing good things for people, helping the dunya become better, right? All of these kind of things. Is that what I want my kids to learn? Or do I want my kids to think, oh, really important people, really VIP people, really special people are the ones that, live in a fancy house and drive a nice car and go on fancy vacations and things like that? Does your family see you for reaching for something more? Or have you gotten too comfortable in the non-threatening sameness of your life? This one's interesting in that, it's about having himmah, having aspiration, but in a good way, not in a dunyawi way. Are you reaching for something more, as in so say, just use an example. Say you're you're coasting in your life, right? You're on autopilot. Do your kids see you on autopilot, or do you have ambition? Do you want to keep studying? Do you want to keep working harder and learning more and expand your business and learn new skills and these kinds of things? If your kids see that, wow, my father, he's a businessman and he wants to develop more and develop his business, that teaches them, inshallah, in a good way, you don't just have to stay at this level. Okay, there's nothing in Islam, we're not communists that say you can't accumulate wealth and work hard. It says that my father or my mother, they work hard, they're educating themselves, they're expanding their business, they have ambition, inshallah, in a good way, because Allah Ta'ala has given you ability. We don't say, there was one khatib, he gave a beautiful, his name is Ustad Mark Manley, he's in California now, he used to be in Philadelphia. He gave a beautiful khutbah once at Yale, and he said, look at it, out of the Ashrat al-Mubashara, the 10 Sahaba that are guaranteed Jannah, many of them are millionaires. Hazrat Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. These people by our standards are millionaires. They weren't masakin and fuqara. Abu Zar Ghifari radiallahu anhu was faqir. He was a poor person, right? Relatively speaking. Abu Huraira, bichara, used to live in the masjid. Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Abdul Rahman, these people had millions of dollars. They worked hard in the dunya. And what did they do with it? They gave it fi sabilillah. They used it for the sake of Allah. So he said there's nothing in our Islam that says you can't work hard and become successful in the dunya. Now do good things with that's what we have to teach our kids. Do you model competency in situations, or do you fear slip in your interactions and keep you from doing many things? Competency in situations is that, do you know what you're talking about? Your kids want to see that my father or my mother, they're smart. They know what they're talking about. Kids look up to you, right? They think when they're young that you know everything. Eventually they realize that you, of course, you don't know everything, but when it comes to your field, they want to feel that, this person, my dad is good at this, my mother is good at this, they can do this thing well. That makes kids feel good. That's a good role model you're setting for them. Do you approach problems and setbacks as opportunities, or do you label every problem a crisis? That one's really good. Do you approach problems and setbacks as opportunities, or label every problem a crisis? They say a positive person looks for opportunity in a challenge. A negative person looks for a challenge in the opportunity, right? It's all about mindset. It's all about your frame of mind, right? You have a problem at work, you have a problem in your job, you have a problem in your community, you have a problem in your family, etc., etc. Are you thinking, how can we use this opportunity to improve the situation? Or is every problem a crisis? If what happens is, if you don't teach kids how to do crisis management, they're going to have problems coping. When problems hit them, they're going to get bad grades in school. They're going to get into a fight with someone, with a roommate, with a brother or sister, with their husband or wife or something like that. Everything is going to be a crisis to them, and they don't know how to deal with. And then, bachara, some people, they have medical crises. Those are real crises. That's the big stuff. If you can't even get over like the little stuff, how are you going to deal with the big stuff when the big stuff happens? Do you model relationships with other people that are loving, affirming, and supportive? Or do you criticize other people and tear them down or talk behind their backs? Now, do you model relationships with other people that are loving, affirming, and supportive? Your kids are watching. You have brothers and sisters. These are their khalas and mamus and things, right? And chachas. They're going to see, how is my father talking to his brother and sister? How's my mother talking to her brother and sister? Is it good? Is it supportive? Obviously, there's always some sibling rivalry. But if they see you're always fighting and bickering and saying bad things about this person in your family and that person and this cousin and that relative, etc., what is that going to do? Right? If you're criticizing them, you're talking behind their backs, or are you loving and affirming and supporting them? Nobody has a perfect family. That's what we said before. It's called because we have some new people here, I'll say it again. People think they have the mashallah, they want the mashallah family. Everyone is perfect. The mother is perfect. The father is perfect. The kids are perfect. Everyone is perfect. That doesn't exist. Even Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the best of creation, we know from the seerah that he had disagreements with his wives, right? We know that Yaqub alayhi salam had problems with his kids. We know that the suffering of Nuh alayhi salam with his children. This is the nature of dunya. This is the nature of life, right? But it's how do you deal with that? Are you loving and supporting and affirming that? Do you go through your day with energy and feeling totally alive? Or are you constantly stressed, tired, emotionally flat or depressed, worried and unhappy? Your kids are going to pick up your emotions. If you're a positive person and you say, Alhamdulillah, I had a good day at work. Alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful day, let's go to the park. If the attitude you have is one of positive, being energetic, your kids will, inshallah, that'll have an effect. If the attitude is, you're always stressed and you're always tired and always, this and that, your kids are going to pick up on that as well. And that's how they're going to go through. If there's always anxiety, your kids are going to pick up on that anxiety. Do you spend quality time with your family, including being involved in and supporting their activities? Or do you back off because you're too busy? And this is coming back to what I said before. It's the quality of time, it's not the quantity of time per se. Some of us that have busier lives than others, maybe every day you can't be with your kids to do their homework, and every day you can't take them to the park and that kind of stuff. But when you get the chance, you're focused, right? And this is a great lesson I learned from my wife. Subhanallah, may Allah reward her. She says that when you're home, the phone goes away. Because the nature of my work is, students call, they text, they have problems, people call, I need help with this, I need help with that. And this is our teacher, Imam Majid. He said, you go home and you can tell people, from this time to this time, my phone is off. You call or text me, I'm not going to pick up, because this is family time. Okay? This is it's 6 to 7, it's dinner time, 7 to 8, whatever. It's time I put my kids to bed. Saturday morning, all Saturday, it's family time. I'm not going to answer this phone, okay? Unless it's a life or death emergency or something like that. And this is what I mean by quality of time, right? But that's being involved in your family, supporting their activities. You know what I mean? Your kids want to go, build model airplanes. Say, Shabash, beta, that's good, go. That's a good activity, go do that. Your kids want to go support their activities that they want to do. Honestly, in this day and age, almost any hobby, for the most part, that they can pick up will be better than them spending time on the computer. This is very hard. I'm not saying this is easy, but if we can say, go and do something, you know, create a project, go do something creative. You know what I mean? That's better than just saying, oh, go on the internet. Go sit in front of your iPad and go G-chat with people all the time. Now the last slide on this is, you are not the only role model in their lives. That's what we have to understand. They will have role models. They will have friends. They will have other people that they look at, teachers and uncles and aunties and things like that. But you are the only one whom you can control. You can't control the other role models. So start being the adult that you hope your children become. Your active involvement in their lives is the most important learning you can impart. Your child will learn about algebra and mathematics and computer science and history and economics and whatever from school, right? You don't have to be the teacher for all that. But the involvement in their lives, right? It's going to be hard for some of us that don't have that relationship with our kids. It takes work, right? You have to build a relationship. Relationships don't happen overnight. But when you do that, that active involvement is the learning you're giving them, right? Inshallah, you're teaching them. Now, we're almost done, inshallah, then we'll do Q&A. Purpose and meaning. Next slide, please. The idea here is, I'll read them because the print is kind of small. By teaching children about Allah, we are teaching them or telling them that life is neither purposeless nor meaningless, that each one of us is part of the divine plan. This is what our ulama say. Allah Ta'ala has a goal for everyone in life. Everyone has some work they have to do in this world, right? Purpose. Our goal is to figure out what that is. Allah Ta'ala made you, He gave you a certain ability, you go and pursue that ability in the dunya, right? All the same time praying and fasting and giving your zakat and going for hajj, because that's your ultimate goal, to worship Allah. But He also said, go do work in the dunya. Okay, don't just sit home all the time. There's a famous story about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh, when he was Amir al-Mu'mineen, he went to the masjid, and this is the Masjid al-Nabwi. He went into a masjid and he saw one young man, he was just sitting there and doing like ibadat, right, in the morning. And then he came back at Zohar time, and he saw this man, he hadn't moved, he was still there. And then he went back, and he's the Khalifa. He went and took care of the affairs of the Khilafat. Can you imagine how much work that was? He came back at Asr time, and he saw the guy there, he hadn't moved. And he said to him, he introduced himself, he says, what do you do? He says, oh, I don't do any work. I just sit here and worship all day. They said, Hazrat Umar kicked him out of the masjid. He said, go get a job. You have to live in this world. You have to get a job. Go get a paycheck. Earn your food. Earn your money. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you have to live. There's time for you to do namaz and pray. And then there's time for you to go to work and be a hardworking person. Because that's the nature of this ummah, right? Is that we're people that work for dunya, because that dunya is going to take us to the akhirah. Children need to know that life is not capricious, not accidental, but purposeful and meaningful. Life isn't just like, oh, anything happens. No, there's a goal, there's a meaning behind what you want to do. Our thing we want to teach our kids is to understand that. If all we do is produce consumers, if the goal is beta, study so you can go to college, and then you can go to college, and then you can get a nice job, and then you can buy a nice car, and you can buy a nice house, and you can get married to a nice family, and then you can, have a nice, live a nice life. If that's what they think, what's going to happen? They don't understand the purpose. Allah Ta'ala gave you the purpose. He made you smart. Be a businessman. Be a teacher. Be an accountant. Be this. Be that. With your doing that kind of thing, now I want to raise my family the right way. I want to work in my community and build my community in a strong way. I want to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my house, in my community, with my relatives, with my friends. Collectively that we do this. That is having a meaningful life. That is having a purposeful life. Saying, we don't want racism in the world. We don't want poverty in the world. We don't want people destroying the environment. We don't want people bombing other people's countries just because they want their oil and things like that, right? That is what we teach our kids. Allah Ta'ala wants the world to be in a certain way, not in another kind of way. Great people are those who do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. Even when no one is looking. You don't do it for reward. You do it because it is right and not for an ulterior motive. And I mean by reward here is like dunyawi reward, right? Allah knows, Allah always notices no matter what. When the child knows that Allah is always watching, it lends significance to every single action. It all matters. This is what they say, right? Taqwa is when you're doing things because you know no one's watching except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa is when I'm alone at night. This is what you teach your kids. When you're alone at night and you have your laptop. You can do any number of bad things with this. But taqwa is when you don't do that. Taqwa is when you're alone somewhere and you can, do something bad and you don't. Teaching your kids that's ihsan, right? Being aware of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously we're human beings, obviously we all make mistakes, but taqwa is I'm getting closer and closer to Allah and farther away from the haram, right? That's the goal, is I'm going in this direction, not in that direction. That's the kind of goal we want to teach our children. It works for dunya, right? I'll tell you right now, I have, kids really like sports, right? I understand, it's just the nature of things. You know, if you ever listen to the interviews of athletes and you watch and they talk about how their training is, these are people that are very serious. They're very serious. They wake up at 5 in the morning, right? They eat a certain diet. They go training at certain times in the morning and then in the evening. They don't eat junk food. They don't do this. They don't do that. They make sure they sleep. Now, substitute all those things in there. They wake up in the morning. That's when we wake up and pray Fajr. They eat certain things. We eat halal and tayyib. We don't eat haram and that which is junk food, right? They do their training at certain times of the day. We pray our salah at certain times of the day. When you teach kids that, like, it's all about, if you work hard with the proper goals in mind, you'll achieve it. You will get better, right? You'll get better at this field. Deen is the same way. That's what I tell my students all the time. People say, I want to be spiritual. Okay, what does being spiritual mean? It means having taqwa. Okay, here's what you have to do. Wake up for Fajr every day. When you wake up for Fajr every day, not just one day and 5 days later you wake up for Fajr, every single day you're waking up for Fajr. Every day you're making a little bit of tasbihat and reading a little bit of Quran. Every day you're trying to, every week you go for Jummah, you put some sadaqah in the sadaqah jar. You have an idea of a goal and you want to get to the goal, and you do things in little increments, right? And it's not because you're expecting a reward from the dunya. Someone's going to give you a gold star. No, it's that I'm doing this all because Allah Ta'ala is watching me at all times, right? To develop that idea that it's the right thing to do. Allah Ta'ala's shariat that He gave us is so beautiful. The shariat and Nida-Ul-Islam is so beautiful. We have to teach this to our kids. That is the best thing for you at, wherever you are. So it says, go and clean up your neighborhood. Do that because that's the right thing to do. And everything that's khair in life is khair because it's from our deen. The next point, throughout your life you have to ask yourself whether Allah would approve of your actions or not. Instill this in your child and teach him to look deeper. They have to look beyond the surface, and then the world will reveal itself to them in its full majesty. They will learn about their own motivation, but also about the motivation of others, and they will be more forgiving, more resilient, and more human. The most beautiful things in life cannot be touched or seen, like God and love. They are intangible. That's what we need to teach our kids is, in life, that we need to be deep people, not be shallow people. Shallow people are like, today they care about this fashion and trend, tomorrow they care about that fashion and trend, they care about, I don't know, just because some of my students, like, I live close to New York City, a lot of them get jobs in New York City, and I go visit them. And then, you go and you listen to people. You just sit there, I just sit there and I listen. Oh, this person, I got this much salary this year. I got this account and I'm flying to London every week on this, and this is how much my bonus is, and this and that. That's all they're talking about, right? They say a man lies hidden under his tongue. Whatever you're talking about is who you are, right? They say that it's connected, I think it's Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu from a hadith he's talking about, but they say that the tongue is the translator of the heart. Whatever is in your heart is going to come out on your tongue. Someone that's talking about money all the time, that's all they care about is dunya. Someone that's talking about food all the time, that's all they care about is food. Someone that's talking about sports all the time, that's all they care about is sports. Someone that's talking about Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what's in their heart. Teach this to your children, to love Allah and His Rasul. That's one of the takeaways I want to teach, is that if we can teach our kids at a young age, be in the dunya, live in the dunya, but love Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than anything else. That's what they're talking about. You know what I mean? That's inshallah that is the great beneficial thing. I'm saying this not because there's any kamal in my part. I'm saying this because Allah Ta'ala has blessed my family, or blessed my wife and my parents for things. One time it was around the month of Rabiul Awwal last year, and my daughter was 3 years old. The may Allah protect her, make dua for her. Is that we were talking about the Shama'il of Imam Tirmidhi, right? That the Prophet ﷺ, his beard was like this, his hair was like this, he used to walk like this, he used to like these kinds of foods, etc., etc. Then one day my daughter said, the Prophet ﷺ is he your friend? He says, he must be your friend because you're always talking about him. I mean, subhanallah, when I heard this, my heart just melted. May Allah Ta'ala make me worthy of of great things. Just because like in the month of Rabiul Awwal, I was reading the Seerah and I was trying to talk about the Seerah to my kids. This has an impact on kids. My daughter's 3 years old and she thinks that the Prophet ﷺ is my friend because I'm talking about him. You talk about your friends. Oh, so and so, we're gonna go play with him and we're gonna do this and that. And I'm just talking, with my son about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and she's thinking, wow, you must be really close with him. I said, I wish I was close, like the Sahaba loved him. I wish I could have even this much love that the Sahaba Kiram had for the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, this is like when we teach our kids to love Allah and His Rasul, that inshallah will translate. You talk about that in the house. I mean, I was driving my son to school. This is literally just this week. I was driving my son to school the other day, and he asked me, he said, what is he asked about my other son. His name is Luqman. Make dua for him too, please. He's 4 months old. He said, Daddy, what does Luqman mean? I said, oh, beta, Luqman is Nida-Ul-Islam. Luqman al-Hakim, he's the wise man in the Quran. He was a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he named, he gave special hidayat and hikmah to in the Quran. And he's like, oh, okay, what does Luqman mean? And I told him the story of Luqman. And then, this is how my son and I were going to school. He's 10 years old and he says, what names does Allah love the most? And I said, wow, this is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He loves the name Abdullah and Abdurrahman. And he says, what does Abdullah mean? And then I told him what Abdullah means. He says, what does Abdurrahman mean? And I told him what Abdurrahman meant. And then he said, what are some other names? So we're talking about Abdul Ghaffar, Abdul Razak, Abdul Wahhab. This, may Allah protect our children, my children, your children, all of our ummah's children. I didn't even be like, oh, beta, let me teach you. Now is dars. I'm going to give you a dars and talim about Islam. He just was wondering about things, and then the conversation went from here to here to here to here to here. And in 10 minutes on the ride to school, we got to talk about the names Al-Jabbar, Al-Wahhab, Al-Wudud, Al-Razak. You know what I mean? May Allah increase it and give your children these kinds of opportunities as well. Is that kids are smart, right? When you kind of just, you just have to kind of point the needle in a different direction, and then they'll go there, inshallah. Now, the last one on this slide. Perfection lies in the struggle to do the right thing amongst the predilection to do otherwise. The one who struggles is the real hero. We are not asking our children to be perfect. We are asking them to struggle to become better and to realize their full potential. The frightening question we will be faced with on Yawm al-Qiyamah is, why were you not as great as you could have been? And that line, when I read it, when I was doing my research, it really hit home. Allah Ta'ala brought you and I and our families to this country in Allah's infinite wisdom. Because there's 1.5 billion Muslims, your brothers and my sisters, your sisters and my brothers around the dunya, all over the Muslim world. And those people are struggling with things that you and I, don't have any problem with. Allah Ta'ala in His infinite hikmah and wisdom brought us to America. And He gave us opportunity. And Allah Ta'ala has every right to ask us, I put you in America, I put you in this place, I gave you a good job, I gave you a good car, I gave you a good house, I gave you a good roof over your head. Allah Ta'ala could ask us, what did you do with it? I gave you a good aql, I gave you good hands, I gave you opportunities. What did you do with it? Did you do something to make yourself better? Or did you just eat your roti and go to sleep at night and live your life? This is something we all have to should make us shake. Our asatiza, our teachers tell us that Allah Ta'ala in His wisdom brought us from America over here. And He says, you know what? I mean, this was one of our shuyukh. He said, honestly, most of the people that came from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that came from Middle East, when they came for what? Economic reasons. We understand in the 70s and 80s, their countries didn't have the opportunity, so they came to this country and they worked hard. And Allah Ta'ala rewarded them. They made themselves. They built this masjid. They built this community, around Jersey and all of these places. Now, they came for economic reasons, right? To improve their dunya. The question is, now you and I are their next generation. Are you and I using the opportunity and the chance we have here for dawah? I'm not saying dawah just converting people on the street. That's not what I mean. Dawah is what? Look, we have problems in society. We have an unjust economic system. We have racism in our communities. We have a society that's destroying, there's no sustainability. We're destroying our environment. Are we using the skills and opportunities and chances that we have, even if in a small way, to make a difference about that? That's your dawah. That's my dawah in different ways. You know what I mean? Are you and I protecting the name of Islam, like in a positive image of, just literally living as a good, decent Muslim and with your neighbors, right? So people say, I don't know about those Muslims that I see on TV about, but I got a Muslim neighbor and they're not bad, right? They're cool. They mow their lawn. Their kids play with my kids. You know what I mean? I see them around the neighborhood. They don't cause any trouble with us, and we don't cause any trouble with them. If we could get to that level, that people will just have neutral feelings about Muslims, inshallah, we'll be in a good place. You know what I mean? So this idea, that's what we have to work to and aspire to, and to teach our children that the one who struggles is the real hero. The one who has a real easy life isn't the one that we should be looking towards. Right? That's why stories are so powerful. I mean, I saw the young kids left or they had to go somewhere. But that's why all these stories, all these kids read all these fantasy novels and, whether it's, Lord of the Rings or whatever it is, all these stories. Because what is it? The epic story is what? Right? This is me, the English major, coming out. The epic story is what? There's a hero. And the definition of the hero is the one that starts in a place. And then he has a journey, right? It's called the narrative arc. And he's going to go on the journey. And along the journey, conflict is going to come. He's going to be challenged from the outside and from the inside. He's going to struggle with his own emotions, his own desires. And from the outside, people are going to attack him. They're going to rob him. They're going to steal from him. They're going to harm him and all these kinds of things. And he fights internally and externally. And at the end of it, he reaches the destination. And he's been transformed. And he's the hero. Right? That's why human beings love stories. Because every story has conflict. And with conflict, you see good and bad, heroes and villains. Right? That's what we have to tell our kids is who struggled more than the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam? Who struggled more than the Sahaba Ikram? Right? Who struggled more than the Salaf in our communities? Right? Just look at the history of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, South Asia. You look at people like Tipu Sultan, and I mean amazing heroes. People like Shah Ismail Shaheed Rahmatullahi alayhi. The list goes on and on. People that and I literally know only a drop in the bucket, right? Of people that did all of this to persevere and to struggle against injustice and oppression over there. Right? And I'm going to tell you one quick story. I was going to, one quick quote, and then inshallah we'll get to the last slide and we'll open up to Q&A. It's kind of related to this. Frederick Douglass, if you study the life of Frederick Douglass is an amazing person in American history. And our kids, hopefully they learn about him in high school. Right? Frederick Douglass is this great abolitionist. He fights against slavery and against racism in this society. And I mean, he's a legend. He was like the early black intellectual and activist, right? Before people even talked about activism and intellectualism and that kind of stuff. Frederick Douglass is a great quote. He said, it's easier to build strong children than it is to fix broken men. It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. And we need to think in those terms. With our children, we need to build them as strong people, young men and women when they're young. It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Because when someone's already grown man and they're broken, the world has broken them. Racism, poverty, oppression, zulm. And you try now, I have to fix this person. I have to rehabilitate them. I have to do their tarbiyah. It's tough when you're 30, 40, 50 years old, right, to do that kind of thing. When I have a 10-year-old and I'm teaching him, this is the nature of a 15-year-old, 20-year-old. This is the nature of injustice. This is the nature of oppression, of zulm. This is the nature, Abu Jahl did it then. This is the Abu Jahl of today. Understand this. This is how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with him. This is how what we derive, the wisdom we derive from the Sunnah, the prophetic model to deal with the Abu Jahl of today. And when you teach that when they're 10, 15 years old, we all love Salahuddin Ayyubi, rahmatullahi alayhi, right? This is from Sheikh Zahir Mahmood. This is an amazing scholar in England. I could literally listen to this man's bayans all day long, right? Mullah Zahir, he said in a bayan, he says everybody loves, he has a really famous lecture, it's online about Salahuddin Ayyubi, rahmatullahi alayhi. He says everybody loves talking about how Salahuddin was the great, he's like the mujaddid of his time and he did all of this, etc., etc. There's no doubt about that. He says, but you have to understand, Salahuddin, from the time he was young, he was being prepared. His madrasa, from the time he was young, his maktab was looking at the dunya, reading Quran, reading fiqh, reading history, reading politics, studying this, looking at the world. And then when he was a young man, his teachers helped him connect the dots. And when you connect the dots in this way, then you have a powerful person. You have a person that's like, I'm 40 years old, I don't have the energy to do that anymore, but a 20-year-old, he's half my age, he has twice as much energy. And he sees the picture, he understands how this all plays together. Those are agents of transformative change, right? I want, inshallah, your children, my children, this community's children, to be those kinds of people. inshallah. Now, the final slide, inshallah. Now, the 4 qualities to teach children. This I got from Sheikh Akram Nadwi. Sheikh Akram Nadwi is a great scholar. He's in Oxford now, right? And this is a lecture that he gave on on parenting and child raising. Right? At the end of it, he says that there's 4 key qualities to teach our children. These are Islamic concepts, right? And inshallah we'll conclude with this and then the ayah of the Quran. He says the first is tahara. Really, what does tahara mean? Tahara is purity of the mind, the body, and the heart. Okay? Purity of the mind, as in you study and think and consume that which is beneficial to you. Don't waste your time on useless things. Body, which is take care of your body. Right? Don't eat junk food. Like, I am all about, we should encourage kids to be physically fit. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we all need to look like, athletes and like be all chiseled and everything like that, because that's also not realistic. You know what I mean? That's another problem why that culture exists. What I'm saying is be physically active people, right? We don't want to be lazy people. And then heart. Obviously this is, tazkiyatun nafs. This is purification of your heart. It's tahara. We should always teach this to our kids, right? Internally, externally. Number 2, ikhbat. Worshipping Allah with utmost humility. That the worship of Allah, your namaz, your roza, your hajj, your zakat, your sadaqah, your tilawat of Quran, all of this is that you have an attachment to it, right? We teach our kids to love the Quran. We teach our kids to love salah. Ideas like taqwa and zuhud, right? This is where, it's one thing to talk about the concept of taqwa, the concept of zuhud. Tell them stories. Tell them the stories of, the Sahaba Ikram from the Salaf al-Salihin. Tell them the stories of the Mujtahid Imams. What did these people do? What did they sacrifice? You know what I mean? Because stories are how you transmit power and like knowledge. You transmit information. That's why I think this culture that we live in, that's why it's so powerful, because they've essentially monopolized, like storytelling. Storytelling through like film, through video games, through all of these things, where it's not that we don't have powerful stories. We don't have those mediums, right? That they're using, that media. But we have the stories, and to teach them that they were not created for attachment to this world. That's a hard lesson, but we teach our children. Allah Ta'ala put you here, right? It's Mullah Zakaria rahmatullahi used to use this beautiful example. He said, it's in Fazal Sadaqat. He talks about this example again and again and again. He says, like, Bhai suno, like, listen, the example is this, that you're sitting in a train station. You're in a train station. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for the train. The train's going to take you to your destination. You're waiting in the train station. When you wait there, you try to prepare yourself. Do I have my needs? Do I have what I need to eat? Do I have what I need to read? Do I have all my provisions? Okay? No one sits around the train station going, oh, I want to make this, remodel this part, and redesign that part, and do this over here, and do that over there. Because what is that? That's the dunya. You're in the dunya, you think, I want to make my dunya look beautiful. And you're not preparing for your journey, right? You're not getting ready for boarding the train. The train is your life. The train is your life that's going to go. And when it stops, is your maut, is your death, when you get off the train station. Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said that, failing to make provisions for your grave is like getting into the ocean without a ship. You're going to drown. Like if you're going to your grave and you don't have any amal, you don't have any provisions, it's like you're going to sail in the ocean and you don't have a ship. You're going to drown. It's not going to save you, right? Teach them that they're not for this world, that they're for the next world, that we're people of akhirah. And samaha, personality, which comprises these qualities: bravery, generosity, patience, empathy. We talked about empathy before. Controlling your desires. Life isn't meant to just be about comfort. It requires struggle and striving. Anything that you want, you have to work hard for. In the dunya, people will take a lesson, right? You want to be a millionaire, you better work really hard. You better get up at 5 a.m. and you better come home at 11 p.m. You want to make all the money on Wall Street. You want to go play in the NBA or the NFL, you better be doing 2-a-days, they call it, right? Practice in the morning, practice in the evening. That's what it takes. You want to get to Jannah, you want to get to Akhirah, and do it in the best way possible, then, there's going to have to be some struggle, some mujahada, some effort that you give here. But, inshallah, the payoff, right, is big. The payoff is enormous, right? What they call ROI, return on investment. Your return on investment is far beyond anything you'll get in this world. And the last is adala. Teach them to be just. Be just to them and teach them to be just to others, right? That the nature of the world is justice. We need to understand this. Because why? Why is this one so important? We live in a world right now where kids are losing hope. They say there's no justice in Palestine. There's no justice in America. There's no justice around the world. They see that affects them. You have to tell them, no, ultimate perfect justice is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Lekin, in this world, you have to be just. You have to be fair. When you deal with people that way, Allah ta'ala will always look out for you. Even if it looks like you're being hurt and people are oppressing you now, you understand that there's still khair, there's still benefit for you. That's a hard message to teach, right? But you teach them when they're a young age to be just. You're always fair and just with them. Inshallah, they'll be fair and just with people. Allah ta'ala will give them tawfiq. We end with the 2 ayat of the Quran. This is the dua from the Quran. Rabbana, O our Lord, grant for us from among our spouses and our offspring the coolness of our eyes and make us leaders of the righteous. And then their call therein in heaven will be, exalted are you, O Allah. And their greeting therein will be peace, salam. And the last of their call will be, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Jazakumullah khair. You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you so much for giving me so much of your time and your attention. May Allah reward you. May Allah reward the organizers. May Allah reward anyone who had any part to do with this presentation, with the publicity, with the arrangements, with the accommodations. May Allah reward Mufti Saab. May Allah reward the organizers of the program. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, I have. Could you just leave the last slide up with the recommended readings? Yeah, just leave. These are the 5 books I talked about. These are theirs. So if anyone wanted to write them down, I also have them up here. These are the books. Obviously, I have a lot of books that I could recommend just because by the nature of my work, I am exposed to a lot of books, and reading and critiquing what's good, what's bad, what should people read or not. But on this subject, I think these are the top 5 I would give for parents and for young people to read because they'll be the most benefit. And they're all written but from traditional scholarly perspectives, right? And they incorporate very good hikmah and wisdom elsewhere, inshallah, as well. We have about 1 hour left. If people want, why don't we take a stretch break? Because I've been talking people have been listening for a while. Maybe stretch 10 minutes, inshallah, come back, and then we can just